Shabbat Shalom, folks. Rabbi Jacques, taping this from Brazil, but still, even far away, I still think of you. And this is a truly special Shabbat. We're getting close first to Purim, and immediately after Purim, Pesach, the ultimate holiday of our freedom. And tonight, following HIAS, the Hebrew Immigration Aid Society's plea, we're celebrating Refugee Shabbat. Shabbat to raise our awareness, our conscience about the problems of refugees. I'm feeling particularly vindicated that I remember last Yom Kippur, I made a request about us being involved in helping resettle refugees in our town, and we're lucky to be in Kansas City, a town that, in fact, is known. It's an integral part of the American government's ways of settling people. Have resettled in Kansas different populations, and now we are dealing above all with Afghanis, although there are people from other nations as well. And I'm very proud of the work Temple Israel is doing together with other congregations and to help resettle Afghan refugees. Above all, I know she's going to be mad at me, but I'm happy to have Joyce being mad at me because I'm pointing out the good things she does. And, she should just enjoy it. She doesn't have to wait to die for me to say good things about her. I hope it takes a very, very long time for Joyce to die, because she really makes a big difference in this world. And she's totally spearheading our effort of helping Afghan families. But I would like to try to give you, from a Jewish perspective, a few sources, and I'll be honest. They're not mine, they come from HIAS. They give rabbis cheat sheets to talk about the relevance and the importance of welcoming refugees in our tradition. Apparently, the mitzvah, the commandment to be fair to the stranger, to welcome the strangers because you are strangers in the land of Egypt, is the most repeated commandment in the whole Torah. So, and I think that is huge. I think, nobody more than the Jews knows the trouble of being kicked away, kicked out, being persecuted because of who we are. In fact, I think there is the pattern around the world, or history, has been, number one, you can't live among us as Jews, so there was expulsion. Then sometimes was, you cannot live among us. I'm sorry, the first one, you cannot live among us as Jews, means they're forced to convert. That didn't work, then you cannot live among us, means people were expelled. And in the third case is the Holocaust, other massacres and pogroms, is you cannot live. So definitely people who opt for being refugees, which is not fun, for sure, are people who clearly don't have any better choices. I'm sure if they had something better, they would stay where they are. And, and again, and that's true for political reasons, for economic reasons, like there's so many refugees from Venezuela, which is one of the greatest tragedies of our time as well. But now we're dealing again in Kansas City with Afghanis, and that's our job to do, and it's our obligation to do. Pirkei Avot says, "Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor ve'in ata ben chorin leipater mimena." No, it's not up to you to finish the job, but neither are you free to give up on it. And I am glad again that we are trying to do our share. I'm sure we could all do more, and we should do more. But let me try to give you a little something of Torah, which is, for instance, in the very beginning, in Genesis 18, we read the story about God appearing to Abraham in Elon Mamre, in the oaks of Mamre, and he was sitting there at the tent waiting, because it was too hot, it was the hottest part of the day, and then he looked far away and he saw 3 men standing opposite him, and then he ran to the entrance of the tent to meet them, and he bowed down to the ground because guests are holy after all. He said, "My lords, if I found favor in your sight, please do not pass your servant by. Let us little water be brought, then wash your feet and recline under a tree, and let me bring a bit of bread so you can restore yourselves. Then you can go on now that you have come from across, you can come across your servant." And they responded, "Very well, as you propose." And this speaks obviously about the culture of hospitality that prevails in the desert, that the guest is holy, and that obviously you try to provide for people. And then it goes on the text, "Abraham then hurried towards the tent to Sarah and said, 'Hurry, knead 3 measures of wheat flour and bake some cakes, bread cakes.' Abraham then ran to the herd and took a young calf, tender and sound, and gave it to the servant lad, who quickly prepared it. He took sour milk and sweet milk and the calf, and he prepared and set it all before them, and he stood over them under the tree as they ate." And there's something very interesting about this, which again speaks about, number one, he offers them, "Let me give you some bread and some water," and he gives them the nicest stuff he has, which is milk and sour milk, and then he gives them a little kid. And this is something I learned in Mexico. There's 3 people, and he gave them a whole little goat, a little baby calf. How many people eat of a calf, you may ask? Luckily, your rabbi travels around, goes to Mexico. There in Monterrey is where they make this. 8 people eat of one calf. Even if it's a small one, you cut it half and then 4 slices, 3 slices making 8 pieces. But Abraham was so generous to these guests that he's giving what is the best he has, because again, remember, this is a people who live off herding cattle, and when you kill a calf, you're basically, eating your merchandise, because it's not going to be producing milk. And then, eating meat was very, very rare, and he gives it to total unknown guests. And then we find a comment in the Chofetz Chaim, in the book of Chabad Chesed. It says, "Additionally, we can learn from the account of Abraham's hospitality that one must educate one's children to do the commandment, as it is written, and he gave the meat to the youth, to the lad, to prepare for the guests." And then the Rashi explains that this refers to Abraham's son Ishmael, whom Abraham was training to perform commandments. So, this is such an important commandment that he not only was doing, but he engaged his child to learn how important it is to receive guests well. And then there's another following text of the Torah. We read very famous verse we're going to read in the Haggadah as well. "You shall not wrong or oppress a stranger, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt." Again, this comes over and over again. And we find in a Midrashic commentary called Mechilta de Rabbi Ishmael, it says, "You should not wrong or oppress the strangers, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt." That's the text. And then he comments, "You shall not wrong with words, you shall not oppress financially," which is, I think, terrific, because we definitely, many parts of the world, refugees end up being used as cheap labor and get really taken advantage of. And finally, give you just last piece. Reading Leviticus 19:14, "The stranger who reside with you shall be to you as your citizens. You shall love each one as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am Adonai your God." And by the way, when a verse in the Torah says, "I am Adonai your God," that means that I don't have to explain to you what I'm talking about. Just do it. Do it because I'm your mother or I'm your father. I'm telling you to do it. That's what "I am Adonai your God" means. And then we have here one of the greatest Jews and the greatest rabbis of our world who recently died, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who wrote in an article at The Guardian in London called Refugee Crisis, Love the Strangers Because You Were Once Strangers. He says, I used to think the most important line in the Bible was love your neighbor as yourself. Then I realized that it is easy to love your neighbor because he or she is usually quite like yourself. What is hard is to love the stranger, one whose color, culture, or creed is different from yours. That is why the commandment, love the stranger because you were once strangers, resonates so often throughout the Bible. It is summoning us now. And I could go on and on and on, but I want to summon you to think about what else can you. I want to summon all of you but Joyce. Joyce, I think, does already too much. She should do less and do more for herself. But everybody else should take over from Joyce or diminish her burden and try to figure out, and also definitely get the opportunity to share the reward of knowing that you're helping somebody to achieve the American dream. You know, as Denise, we're not refugees. We came here as immigrants. It definitely was hard. I mean, lots of things we had to go through. I can just imagine how hard it must be for refugees. So, you know, I'm glad we are already beginning to heed, to listen to this call, but I know there's much more we can do. And, you know, and if you are wondering what you should do, don't ask me, ask Joyce. She knows. Shabbat Shalom.